Hey there everyone, Jello Grayson here and welcome to a new tutorial video. For today's project, we are going to be modifying this pre-bought wooden katana into something that looks a little bit better. Yep, we're going to be converting this sword into Giyuu Tomioka's Nichirin blade from the anime Kimetsu no Yaiba. Now, I usually make these swords from scratch, just like this sword over here. This is Kenshin's reverse blade. Just made from PVC plastic, Worbla, and a whole lot of things that might take too long to list down. Today though, I'll be discussing how to properly disassemble this sword and prep it for painting and all the nice finishes that we're gonna do today. So without any further ado, let's get started! Alright, so the first thing we're going to be doing for the build would be to disassemble this prop. Thankfully, it's held together by just hot glue, so a quick blast of the heat gun should be enough to melt the glue, allowing me to slowly remove the fittings. As you can see here, it doesn't take much effort to pry them apart because there was very minimal glue applied to the hollow of the grip. Some swords in my experience were a pain to disassemble because more glue was applied, so just remember to work slowly. The last thing you want is for your base prop to break due to too much force. For the other fittings like this kashira or pommel, I had to use my screwdriver for a little more convincing. I won't be using this part because I 3D modeled and printed a more accurate kashira. The next thing that needed attention was the existing grip. This is a nylon cord that I cut open here with my X-Acto blade where the manufacturer heat sealed the nylon. All it takes is a gentle pull and the cord is liberated from its grip. We will be replacing this with a white cord instead. I'll be keeping this one for future projects. The next part to remove is the fuchi or the sleeve. Again, I'll be using my heat gun to soften the glue and my screwdriver to push it out. Though I did need more force, so I used my trusty rubber thwacker. Lastly, I peeled off the faux stingray skin. We will be painting this along with the grip maroon to match the reference photos. One of the more important mods is up next. I wanted to give the kisaki, or the sword point, a sharper look, so I initially drew the shape using a pencil. I took chunks out using my saw, and it was off to the belt sander to refine the shape. You can actually use sandpaper for this step, but I like working fast, and the belt sander helps me a ton. After that, I sanded the surface of the wood smooth using 400 grit sandpaper. Quick tip! I did this in the shower because that will make things easier to clean up. Once the blade was super smooth to the touch, I added a kanji using a pencil and used my X-Acto blade to carve the writing. Even though it's a lot of hard work, this is definitely my favorite part of the build. Feels great to just get lost in the tedium. Very therapeutic if you ask me. In this part, I took my tiny metal ball stylus sculpting tool and just went over the carvings lightly to smoothen out the parts that were carved too sharp. Next is the segment most of you have been waiting for, the application of the chrome vinyl. This material is typically used to wrap cars instead of painting them. I used a color called tungsten silver and bought this online in Shopee, link in the description. Now, as you can see, I am lightly stretching it over the blade and pressing it firmly with my thumbs. After that's more or less stuck, I use a heat gun to activate the adhesive further. This way, we'll be able to remove most of the wrinkles. I stretch the vinyl over the spine of the blade and use my heat gun again to set the plastic. I then trimmed off the excess with an X-Acto knife. The same was done on the edge side of the blade. The last thing that we need to do is to remove the protective film that is on the vinyl. In this step, I took my heat gun and heated the engraving area. With my metal ball stylus tool, I pushed the vinyl to conform to the crevices that I carved earlier. Alright, now we're off to painting. First things first, we'll need to mask the silver. I used my favorite tape, Tamiya masking tape, for the blade edge. For the Gisaki area, I used flexible Tamiya masking tape so we can make a nice gentle curve. These tapes can be bought in your local hobby store and are usually used for scale models. I love using them because they leave little to no residue after masking. I did the same on the other side and sealed the edge with regular masking tape. As for the paint, I used this Bosny metallic blue. Bosny's line of metallic paints are actually translucent, which works out really well since we still want the vinyl to show through. I sprayed around 2 or 3 coats of this color onto the blade. I made sure to work slowly to avoid paint buildup. Once it was dry, I removed the tape to reveal a very sharp color edge. I then sealed the paint with 3 coats of Bosny clear gloss. This will protect the finish from scratches, especially since we expect the sword to be sheathed and unsheathed multiple times. I then went to model and print the tsuba, or the handguard. I used Fusion 360 to create the parts and my Ender 3 Pro to print them. I unfortunately forgot to model a few details, so I had to manually sand it using my needle files. After that was finished, I went back to the grip. The stock grip has this lovely stingray skin pattern, and I glued and painted it maroon. To enhance the look of the leather, I took my oil paints and made a dark wash to deepen the shadows. I mixed crimson, black, and paint thinner and applied it onto the surface. After drying, I used acrylic paint for the midtones. This time, I mixed a bright red and a pinkish red. I used a technique called dry brushing, which involves a brush almost devoid of paint and brushing that onto the surface. This way, only the high points get painted on. For the highlights, I added a very small amount of white paint to the original paint mixture. I then lightly dry brushed this new paint on, giving a very cool 3D look to the leather. Next up would be to do the Tsukamaki, or the grip wrapping. I first marked where the fuchi ends with a pencil. This will be where we will start wrapping the grip. I used around 4.5 meters of 3mm elastic garter to wrap the sword, and I located the midpoint of the length of cord. This is where the wrapping will begin. I glued that mid-segment onto the left side of the sword and started wrapping on the opposite side, always starting with the cord on the left. As you can see, it's a simple two-fold process per cord, but the difficult part is keeping it even all throughout the grip. I also added a dab of glue on the top and bottom so that it never comes loose even after multiple uses. Note, this is only one way to wrap a katana. There are a lot of different styles out there, but this one seems to be the most common one I've seen. Just remember to be patient and you'll get this wrapping done in no time. I suggest putting some music to zone out. As for the end knot, I basically wrapped the rest of the fabric onto the last grip segments. For a more in-depth demonstration, I will be linking videos that I watched to learn how to create and finish Tsukamaki in the description. Once the knots were done, I hot glued the new 3D printed kashira. I also hammered the fuchi back in its place. One last thing to finish the grip would be to add a fake mekugi, or pin. This is the pin that secures the blade onto the grip of a real katana. I will be using this metal rivet to replicate that piece. I almost forgot to fix this piece. This is the habaki, or the blade collar. The original had engravings on it, so I used polyester putty to fill them in and my belt sander to sand it smooth. The habaki has a seam right down the middle, so I marked the line using my pencil and carved that on using my X-Acto knife and my needle file. After which, this part was painted silver. And just like that, the parts for the katana are ready for reassembly. I started with the habaki, then test fitted the tsuba before gluing it into place. The grip was filled with hot glue and tapped on the table so that the glue seeps inside the grip further. We're almost there, guys. We just need to fix one last part. The last thing we need to take care of would be the sheath. Giyuu's sword doesn't appear to have a kurigata, or knob, so I filled this crevice with 5mm PVC plastic sheath. I then carved it down to size, and then sanded it flush to the body of the sheath. I painted the sheath flat black and started reattaching the fittings. And with that, we are finally done. Alright, that about wraps it up for today's video tutorial. I hope you learned a thing or two, and I hope this also helps you with your own projects as well. If you like what you see and you'd like to see even more cosplay projects and tutorials like this, go ahead and click the subscribe button somewhere around here. If you would like to see even more, you can also follow me on my Facebook and Instagram. That's at JellaGrayson. Okay? Thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope you guys stay safe and stay crafty. Alright? Bye!